Hello, friends. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark Offseason Edition. This is Kirk Henderson, joined as always by fellow editor at Mavs Moneyball, Josh Bowe. We are recording. It's a little after 8:30 on, I guess today's Tuesday, July 23rd. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing good. You are Office Kirk today.
Yeah, I'm technically it's 9:30 my time. I'm East Coast Kirk for a little bit today. I had to fly out, deal with some work bullshit. And when Josh reminded me we had to do the pod tonight, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stay late because the internet works here. But yeah, it's been kind of a quiet week on the Mavs front. This is, for my liking, kind of the most. We're kind of entering the most quiet period that we're going to get for a long time. The only real news. The only real news is that the Mavericks signed somebody to that 15th spot. They will be bringing back Spencer Dinwiddie, which I am very interested in. And I will lead with my statement that I hope it does not matter.
Right.
I don't want to have to think about Spencer Dinwiddie. But as far as the 15th man goes, I don't know, not bad. What do you think?
Yeah, that's usually the good way to think about it. You don't want the last signing of the offseason, the last roster spot shouldn't usually matter. But then again, Derek Jones Jr. was that move, the equivalent
Harder on a
last
finals
summer. Right. So we'll see. Everything can matter. I thought it was interesting that they went this direction. One, because he flat out picked the Lakers over them, and I almost wondered if there was gonna when he was a free agent after buyout season last year or earlier this year. I honestly wondered if that created a bad rift between the Org and him, that he basically flat out would pick LA over them, but I guess not. And then two, when you look at the roster and you look at what they potentially could use, I thought Dennis Smith Jr. made a lot of sense, and there was reported interest from Mark Stein that he was one of the candidates for this last spot. And when you look at what the Mavericks have, if everyone's fully healthy, Smith offers some things that not a lot of other players on the roster offer,
Yep.
in terms of defense from the guard position. But I can't blame them out. I kind of mentioned that on Twitter, and apparently a lot of people are really stoked that they picked Dinwiddie. So I'm not trying to fight against people that are happy with
Sure.
this move. And I get the Mavs thinking that they feel that insurance for Luka, Kyrie, Exum injuries, which are gonna happen, like it's
Yeah.
just a reality, matters more than having some more point guard defense. Like,
Well,
and I
I
get
heard
it, totally defendable position.
one interesting take from one of my various group chats. Might have been Dwight from the 21 Going on 77 podcast. So I apologize to Dwight if I'm stealing his take. But someone said, I wonder if this is kind of an indication that Kid is more out on Exum than he is in. And I like the thinking behind the take, but where I sort of fall on it is that it's a very long season. He provides to you a very different kind of ball handler than Dante Exum. Like, I never felt like I feel like Dante Exum can run an offense. I do not feel like Dante Exum can get his own shot. Spencer Dinwiddie was capable is capable of some high scoring output kind of night. So when I look at the roster, I see lots of different types of guards and guys that are able to do different things. And while Spencer is not my favorite, mainly due to his just how he speaks to the media, I think his play and what he brings to the court is a good fit. I mean, it was a good fit. I don't see why it wouldn't be a good fit again. I mean, there's some questions about his defense, but honestly, if Spencer Dinwiddie is playing a significant role in the rotation, then the Mavericks season hasn't gone very well.
Yeah, that's true. And there's something to be said that, so he's played what? So he left Brooklyn for the first time right before the 2021-2022 season. So he's played he's played 3 seasons since he left Brooklyn for the first time. And the only stretch of basketball that was good during those 3 seasons was basically the 12 months he was in Dallas.
Yep.
From February 2022 to February basically 2023. Like, and it's not even close. Like, you go to his basketball reference page, and it's just hilarious. Like, in Washington, he's shooting 43% on twos, 31% on threes. In Dallas, both years he was, um, near above 40%. He's never been close to 40% any other time of his career except for a short stretch with the Lakers last year in
Right.
games. Like, it's astounding how much better he was in Dallas compared to everywhere else for the last
And that's what. So it's like my friend Colton in the chat. He was chatting before the show even started about how happy he is Dinwiddie's back. And I think fans that only watched him in Dallas may be pretty surprised how weird his career has been outside of Dallas. And I don't know, maybe you make magic again.
Go ahead. Or you think?
No,
I don't want to interrupt your train of thought because I was thinking.
I'm formulating a thought. Go.
All right. In Dallas, he was at his best when Brunson was here, and when basically when he was ever playing with another point guard. You think about after the trade when he first got here, he was always playing with either Brunson coming off the bench or he was playing with Luka. They would stagger those three so that two of those three would always be on the floor at the same time. And then going into the next season when Brunson left, he was starting next to Luka, and those lineups were generally scoring pretty well. And the trouble was when Spencer was on the floor without Luka or without Brunson. The Mavericks offense absolutely cratered. When he was asked to be the only point guard on the floor, be the only, initiator in Dallas, it was bad, very bad. But when you look at the Mavericks roster, they've got Luka and Kyrie. Yeah, so theoretically, that should never happen again.
Yeah.
He should always be playing with one of Luka or one of Kyrie, if he's playing at all. Like, I mean, we don't know how much he's going to play when everyone's healthy.
I mean, so we're gonna answer some mailbag questions a little later in the show, and I think, and this is mainly just due to the July, August. There's a lack of content, so we devolve into take wars, and that sort of like the rotation stuff is something I'm actually looking forward to talking about a little bit, even though it ultimately doesn't matter being July. But if he can, one thing that's sort of underrated and misremembered, quite candidly, because the rest of the 2022-2023 season was such a disaster, is when Spencer was traded, he was the wrong vibes guy at the wrong time. There were a lot of January quotes from him where he talked too much, said too much, and came across looking like a guy who was really out in front of his skis in a bad way. And that's sort of been his tendency during his career, is a mic gets put in front of him and he says a little too much.
He's the kind of guy that it's great when things are going well. It's great. When things are going bad, it's not fun.
And reporters go to guys that give good quotes. That's something that must, and he gives a good, I don't want trying to think of how,
probably too honest for his own good.
Yes, that's the best way to put it. So, but I don't think, given the way that this roster is constructed, I don't really know how often he's going to be put in the position to talk like that, because, we heard late into the season that whichever Morris was on the bench for the Mavericks was a pretty key component in keeping things together, but you never heard from him in the media. And I'm wondering if because I honestly think Keith comes back. I think they move on from AJ Lawson. That's just my opinion. I think those guys kind of serve as your bench veterans, your guys to keep things stable, steady, light, whatever you want to call it. And if he gets to play, okay, I think they may need him for some games. But one thing that I was sort of, I didn't really argue with anybody about this, but earlier when it's a couple weeks ago and people are still making choices, I think there's a lot of emphasis on role, and who the 15th person signed doesn't have a role. The role is what the season brings. And I think Dinwiddie's far enough into his career now that, he's having to take minimum deals to sign. He's going to have to be happy with what he gets. And he probably knew that coming in, and this is a good enough team. So I expect him to be, now that I've given it some thought, probably a reasonably good chemistry guy, as long as things are going well. And, as we've talked about this, I'm sure we'll talk about it a little more during the mailbag, but there is a real The Mavericks are primed to have a good season. You know, I've not written anything or had any audacious takes because I'm just like, they went to the finals and then they changed some stuff around in a really interesting way, and I don't see why they can't have a great regular season. You know, that's just sort of where I land.
This is by far the best the team has been set up to start the season strong since, I don't know, what, 2020? That's before the 2019-2020 season started. I mean, there's not a lot of question marks. You know, they've made their moves. They're not, before last season, they had a good summer, but it was a lot of, well, is Lively going to be better, or what is Lively going to look like? Can Grant Williams, fit in with what they want to do here, even though we all agreed that was the right move to bring him in here.
Yep.
They've made all the, they get to start the season with Gafford and PJ Washington. There's not this cloud hanging over that they need like one more big move, because they made the finals with this team and they added Klay Thompson, they added Quentin Grimes. Like, they're just, there's not as much to figure out, I don't think. There was so much, they lose Brunson and you have to figure, he's such a huge part of the team. They had to spend so much time trying to figure out what to do without Brunson. They come into this offseason and they've got a rookie that's starting at center. There's so much you have to figure out there. Like, things feel pretty settled now. Even though you are adding in a big name like Klay Thompson, he's been around the block long enough that hopefully that integration and with how he fits, like, that hopefully isn't a bumpy road to start. So they're set up well to finally get off to a good start. And they haven't. What's that?
I was going to talk about this.
About how they've never started well.
They've started okay at best. And then what's happened is, if you look at, so Jason Kidd's had a 3-year coaching career at the Mavericks. They went to the Western Conference Finals in year 1, missed the playoffs in year 2, make the finals in year 3. Pretty amazing when you think about that. However, they won 52 games in the first year, right?
Right. They won at least 50. Yeah, 52.
52 and 30 sounds right. Then they won 50 last year, which isn't enough to be high in the West, okay? But if you go look at their records in October, November, December, January, for all 3 of those years, the Mavericks are not just under 500, they're kind of awkwardly under 500, to the point to where that's why we would do things like call for Jason Kidd's job. It's a fact. But then February, March, and April, they play like something like 65% winning percentage, particularly in 2022 and 2024. 2023, obviously a little bit of a mess. Point being is that they need to play better in the regular season to actually be the kind of team we think they can be. The difference between this year's team, last year's team, and the 2022 team is that I still believe Jason Kidd is going to mix and match a ton early in the season to figure out what he has. But the quality of the players that he has to mix and match is above the kind of players that he had in 2022 and 2023. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. This is easily the most talented roster they've had.
So you raise that floor, and so they have a better margin and will hopefully rack up wins while experimenting, instead of figuring out what doesn't work and losing games, which happened an awful lot in November and December. And it's really, I mean, seriously, guys, go look back at some of these things in these years, and you're going to be kind of flabbergasted at the losing streaks that they have, which, if you remember, if you've been with Josh and I for a while, I mean, good God, they started a season 2021-22 with 2 straight post-ups to Dorian Finney-Smith. Like, that's the sort of shit Kidd would do. And now, okay, I bet the first play that they run to start the regular season will be like a Klay catch and shoot off of a series of screens. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a very different outlook. So.
No, yeah, for sure. I agree with you. And it helps that a lot of the guys they brought in can shoot. Like, it's easier to mix and match and fit and win while you're experimenting when you're playing a bunch of shooters, you're playing a bunch of athletes. Like, Grimes is a good shooter, Klay is a good shooter. Those are their 2 biggest pieces. Najee Marshall hopefully is a good shooter. That might be, we'll see what it is. But that'll make a big difference as well. Because Luka, Kyrie plus shooting, there's like a baseline floor in the regular season where you would think that wouldn't lose a lot of games, even if they're trying to figure things out.
All right, we're about 15 minutes into the show. We're going to pause for a quick break. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. For those of you who are here live, Josh and I have been going about once a week. I don't know how our schedule is going to continue. I may host a live show one day. I'm not really feeling it, just to be perfectly candid. Not because I'm like out on the Mavs, but because I don't want to say anything when there's nothing that needs to be said. And so it's in Josh and I's interest actually to put out as much content as possible, but regular season's so long. We do so many shows during the regular season. I think that this year, 82 games plus playoffs, I probably did in the neighborhood of 150 total podcasts, if not, and that was despite having a baby. So, subscribe to the show if you're new here. During the regular season, we really pick up the pace. We like talking Mavs, and we love talking Mavs with our fans. Those of you who are listening to an audio stream, please consider leaving a review. You can shoot me a message. You got anything you want us to cover? Very interested in that. And we will, be back regularly with content probably every Tuesday from here on out. We'll figure out something. And now I'm going to insert some audio ads. So if you wouldn't mind listening to those, we will be right back. Okay, so when Josh and I decided that we were going to podcast today, I put out a kind of a call for mailbag questions. And we got a pretty healthy mix of stuff. I was pretty surprised about this because I always assume like 200 people follow me on Twitter, not 20,000. And then when we get a lot of like interesting questions, I sort of wanted to start with this. So Josh is going to be looking through to see which one we're each probably going to do at least 2 or 3 of these and see where it takes us. My friend at MarkIt02056 says, how do you feel about Hardy, Exum, and the Dinwiddie minutes, and how will they shape up? It's a really interesting one because I sort of don't think that any of those 3 will be in your top 7. So let's just go with the top 7 for me here. So you got Kyrie, Luka, PJ, Lively, Daniel Gafford. Who am I missing? Klay Thompson, Najee Marshall. Who am I not saying, Josh?
Did you get Maxey?
No, I did not get Maxey because I'm sort of wondering if Maxey's on the outside looking in.
I would think he's playing, right?
That's
kid likes Maxey. Like
that's where this just starts to get so interesting because you take a look at guys and Quentin Grimes is another one who's going to get minutes. And I think they give him a shot early just because of his, he's a little bit bigger of a guy, 6'5", as opposed to Hardy, who's 6'2", for example. It's kid's just going to have a lot of options at his disposal. So I think that, particularly within the first 20 games, there's probably going to be a fair amount of grumbling that certain guys don't see much time at all. Hardy maybe being one of those. I just sort of think he's on the outside looking in, despite playing well in the playoffs. The regular season is just, it's so odd. And Kid is so much a guy who seems to want to experiment. So that would be sort of my immediate response. And I think that Exum, of the 3, Exum, I just sort of expect to get first crack based off of the way defense is allowed. And then maybe even Dinwiddie before Hardy, but that's just kind of a veterans thing. Do you think I'm right or wrong there?
I think you're on the right track. I mean, honestly, if everyone's healthy, I don't know if Dinwiddie or Hardy are playing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, if Luka and Kyrie and Exum, unless Exum, this just comes down to, did Kid completely lose faith in Exum during the playoffs that he's not even going to play him in the regular season? Now, I don't know, but Exum was so productive in the regular season. Even with the playoff run, it seems wild to think that he would just be dropped out of the rotation entirely. So if everyone's healthy, I don't, it's Luka, Kyrie, Exum are your guards with, Klay, Najee Marshall. I mean, Najee Marshall's more of a wing, but Klay, Quentin Grimes, Najee Marshall kind of rotating in for those other guard wing spots. I don't see the minutes for Hardy or Dinwiddie, but the key thing is that's not necessarily a knock because those guys have to be ready because Kyrie, Luka, and Exum will miss games. It's like they will. Those guys do not play 80 games. Like they're just
built in.
They're gonna miss Each one of those guys is going to miss anywhere between 5 to 15, 5 to 20. That's going to be the range of games that they will miss. And you will need Hardy and you will need Dinwiddie during those stretches. So it's one of those things where I think opening night, it's going to make maybe, you're not going to see Hardy off the bench pretty quick right away, but he's going to, the way these seasons last, the way that they're going to try to strategically rest guys when they can, the way guys get hurt, those guys will get their opportunities at 100% for certain. There's going to be a week where Dinwiddie is playing maybe 22 minutes a game or Hardy's playing like 18 minutes a game because they're going to need bodies to fill spots.
Yep. All right, so I like that one. Did you peruse any of the questions? Did you see any ones that you would maybe want to answer or ask and answer?
Sure. Leo, and this was under you, Leo at Leonardo_14 with
Leonardo Hernandez there in the chat, who's teasing me that I'm in an office right now.
Oh, great. Look at that synergy. He asked, what improvements would you like to see from D-Live entering his second year? He asked a bunch of questions, but I kind of wanted to talk about that one.
Sure.
So I think a lot of people are going to be really pushing the 3-point shot. And I know you talked about it a lot.
He's not going to take them either.
I don't think he's going to take threes next season. He might take one 3 every 5 games. Like that might be the rate. And that's maybe being really optimistic. I don't think he's going to take a lot of threes. For me, the improvements, he was already so great. It's going to be, can he stay on the floor longer? He did a pretty good job with fouling, but it's still something that he could work on. It's going to be, how does he react playing? It's going to be mostly offense, how he plays as the roll man in the pick and roll besides finishing dunks. He showed so much his passing and his instincts when he was in the short roll in 4-on-3 situations was miles ahead of where I thought he was coming out of Duke, because he really didn't do anything like that at Duke. So seeing his progression, being able to make reads when he catches the ball near the free throw line and he has options, being aggressive with the ball and scoring in those situations, which he did do pretty well last year, but just getting more repetition, getting more reps to do that. And then defensively, the last bastion for him is switching. And I think you saw in the finals, he did not switch very well until I would say maybe games 4 and 5. He got a little bit better, but he was not great at the perimeter last season. And I think that's not a knock. He just, again, he didn't do that stuff in college. He didn't guard stretch bigs a lot in college. That's another area. Can he guard stretch bigs a little bit better? So I think those are probably the two things I'm looking for him to improve. Can he play defensively at the perimeter a little bit more than he did as a rookie, and can he do it a little bit better? And then offensively, can he continue to improve and make good decisions in the pick and roll? That's not just dunking easy dunks or scoring layups. Can he put the ball on the floor for 1 or 2 hard dribbles and score consistently? Can he keep making the right passes and reads when he has those situations?
Well, and one thing to remember, the Mavericks really knuckled down and played great defense following the trade deadline. They established an identity, the rules were changed. But regular season defensive intensity is very different than postseason defensive intensity. The teams aren't scouted as well. Certain things are emphasized, but it's not. There's just such a relentless onslaught of different opponents to where you don't get the same. And they're going to be trying different things. So him managing to just play similar minutes, I think, is going to be kind of a win. I know that sounds like a little bit of a cop-out because he's just exhibited such tremendous leaps in his ability to do different things. So my standards aren't particularly high. I know that sounds stupid because he's probably the 3rd most important player on this team, maybe even 2nd on what you think about Kyrie in a given situation. But he's so outpaced any expectations I had for him. So it's like, where does the growth come from? It comes in such small areas that I'm not sure it's going to be easy to be recognized. The offensive stuff is almost tougher for me because I don't know. I would love to see him pass more out of the short roll. I don't see how the hell they guard, like how anyone guards the Mavericks. So I don't think he's going to get a chance to do any of that stuff. I'm interested to see how he works with Klay Thompson. A lot of the stuff with like Klay's passing is fascinating to me. So
Yeah. I mean, he only averaged 23.5 minutes per game last season. Like can he be a 30-minute per game starter?
Okay.
Can he do that? That would make a big difference.
That's right. Okay.
Do the Mavericks want him to do that? Like they've got Gafford. Like how's that going to work? So that's going to be interesting to see how they navigate that.
I like it. Okay, now it's my turn. This is from at Booster Green 241. This is a broad question that I love. Should the Mavericks rebrand?
I mean, that's an easy one. Yes.
Gosh, I hope they do. And so guys, just for context, the Mavericks have had fairly similar branding the entire time Mark Cuban owned the team, which I think is actually a good thing for recognition. But every now and again, we see NBA teams, particularly teams that, like the Bulls are never going to rebrand. They have an iconic logo. They have, 6 championships. It's that sort of thing. The Mavericks are a well-known NBA franchise, but given the kind of throwback uniforms we've seen, we've also seen all kinds of different looks from the Mavericks over the last 40 years to where I don't think they should be married to one particular thing. I hope they try something different at some point. The city uniforms that Nike's rolled out for them the last several years have all been fairly different, but we've all had very strong opinions. The black ones this year were very interesting and very different. I know we all really liked the green. I would be curious to see what they do. I don't know if they will because, the new owner's still getting his feet wet. That strikes me as something once you have a firmer opinion. And there's kind of the question of, would you do a rebrand while you're in the middle of year 6 of a franchise defining player in Luka Doncic? I don't know. It's an interesting question. I'm not up enough on sort of branding and style, and like the different sort of things of what pops and figuring out what will work for years and years is really guesswork. So I like the question.
I really, I don't know when they should do it. They had a really golden opportunity to do it after Dirk retired and the franchise was officially Luka's. And me personally, I would have thought it would have been cool because the kind of the current style, the 2 main uniforms Mavericks have, obviously with the Nike stuff over the last I don't know, I feel like it's been like 5, somewhere between like 6 to 8 years. It's been the Nike stuff where there's new jerseys every year. Before that, they had the home, they had a home, a road, and then like one alternate, and then an occasional throwback. Now they have
alternates and stuff are just boring.
Yeah, but for the Dirk era, he defined their standard home road jersey. Right now it's the home white with Dallas across the chest, and then before that it was that really dark navy with Dallas across the chest, and then they got from the 2011 team on, they got that kind of more royal blue with Dallas across. Like Dirk defined that look and branding that the Mavericks have had. And there was a part of me that was like, when he retired, they should have retired that look and started a new look for Luka to own. They obviously didn't do that. And like you said, now they're like in year 6. So I don't know if they're ever going to do it. I mean, they will eventually, but we'll see. I would love it. I mean, the one nice thing about the Nike stuff is that they do at least get new jerseys all the time. So that look they're not beholden to that same jersey that they've basically had since 2001 or whatever it is. So, we'll see. But I'm totally ready. I'm totally ready for them to rebrand. They need a new logo. I think a new logo would be fun. But yeah, I want to see something like, I kind of want to see Luka have his own look, the way that Dirk was, because Dirk was almost given his own look to define because they rebranded shortly after they drafted him. So that's just kind of my thought on it.
Your turn.
Oh boy, my turn. So it's gonna be, I don't even know who we should attribute this to. All right, let's do Sean Bush at Sean Bush 3, who mutual follower who I think we've both interacted with multiple times. Good follower, longtime follower, and supporter of the show and the website. Who do you think wins the backup power forward role come playoff time between Maxey and Omax? He says, excluding Najee on this one, obviously he'll get run there too. I don't even know, no offense to the question, obviously, but Omax shouldn't even be in that question. He's not. He's not going to play. He's not going to play this season unless some catastrophic injuries happen, or
unless he plays and he plays real well.
Yeah, there's just a leap that we're just not anticipating.
Yep.
So I think it's going to be Maxey, and they're probably going to use PJ, Maxey, and Najee at that spot as a 4-man. I know Najee is 6'7" with a pretty long wingspan, so he's kind of got a similar height and length that PJ has. I don't see Omax getting opportunities there. I don't see them running double big lineups. They didn't really do that last season. It's going to be Maxey is going to probably own that role. And the thing that they're going to have to figure out is that obviously Maxey can't play a lot, and he's going to get hurt, and they're going to have to manage minutes without him. So, what does that look like when Maxey's hurt? Do they experiment a little bit more than that? Do they try some different things? Is that when they try an Omax in the lineup? I don't know, but
I don't think so. I think Najee was to get just because of his bulk.
Right. I just don't see. It's going to be Maxey. I don't see Omax fitting into this season at all, unless something just pretty drastic happens that we're not anticipating.
And that's okay. That's not an indictment of him at all. No. The fact that he can't crack any of these top 10s is arguably a strength of what this team has to offer.
If the Mavericks didn't make the finals, then maybe we're like, okay, what's going on? But they made the finals.
That's right.
The fact that your 24th overall pick from a year ago isn't ready to be an NBA Finals contributor is not a failure in team building. That's how things work.
My friend, the Gar at kid _ on Twitter, he also has his own live streams and such. He does live. He's been doing a lot during the offseason. He's in the chat there. He asked the question, why are Mavs fans not seeing Najee as a 4, but okay with PJ and DFS being the 4? And I think that just comes from seeing it.
Because once they see Najee, they'll get it.
Yeah, and I also think that it's important to acknowledge the fact that the Mavericks are going to be a good defensive team, but I want to kind of caution everyone's expectations. They are not going to be a top 5 defense. Kid likes to experiment too much. They might round out and have months or weeks where they're unbelievable, but I wouldn't be shocked if we're bitching about their defense for the first 30 games. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Do you think I'm wrong in that regard? I just think when trying, they had such a tight rotation by the end of 7.5 guys, and then you threw Maxey into the mix to be able to do stuff. They were really able to get it done. Luka and Kyrie are not going to guard like that in the regular season. It's just not happening.
No, I don't think so. And it depends. And there's going to be some growing pains with Clay defensively. They're going to have to figure that out. That's going to come part of the experimentation and how they figure out how to close lineups.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be I guarantee an early season storyline will be there will be some games where it makes more sense for maybe either Grimes or Marshall to close over Clay, depending on how Clay's playing.
Yep.
And they're going to have to figure that part out. And that might lead to the defense maybe not being right off the bat, picking up where they left off from the playoff run and the end of the season. But they should round into form. And
yeah, I'm not worried about that. No, because it's too long a regular season. But they have enough baseline talent to be pretty good. All right, did I ask that question or did you?
I did. So you're up.
Ooh, gosh, I wasn't even looking for my next one. Where's a good one? There were lots of good questions, by the way, guys. Really appreciate some of the thoughts. Oh, this is a good broad-based one. Jeffrey K says, what would be a baseline for a successful season in your mind next year? Gosh, that's hard after winning the finals. And frankly, I have just enduring this may be me finally becoming a softie after turning 40, but I think there's some element of just wanting to enjoy the ride. I was very, very pleased with the final run for obvious reasons. But one other element that came through is a lot of the stuff that fan base, bitch about during the regular season really started to fall away. And people stopped worrying about some of the same narratives, like the various Kyrie super fans. There was that stuff just stopped mattering because it's okay, are the Mavericks going to win a chip or not? I think another a trip to the Western Conference Finals would sort of be the baseline for success, which is really hard because that means you finish top 4. Again, guys, Rick Carlisle had 5 total playoff series wins during his time with the Mavericks. 5 total. Jason Kidd has 5 right now. The winning in the playoffs is hard, and I'm going to really emphasize that during the course of the year. but the Mavericks need to put themselves in a position to be successful, which means a good regular season. And so I really think the baseline for success would be top 3 seed, top 4 seed if you're feeling frisky, and finding a way to make it to the Western Conference Finals. What about you?
I don't really disagree with that. I might be a little bit more lenient on the playoff outcome.
Sure,
Just like
I think it's fair.
as long as they don't lose in the first round, like as
Mhm.
long as they can make it to the second round, I think you're avoiding maybe a disappointment, or I mean, it'll be disappointing if they don't make, if they don't get to the Western Conference Finals. But in terms of like a failure or something
Yeah.
like that's deemed catastrophically bad, anything, but as long as they get past the first round, I think that's okay. But the big thing is, yes, they need to be a top four team in the West. They need to.
They need to have the home court. They need to have the
They
built-in rest advantages. The
they
things like
cannot
that.
they cannot do another season where they're puddling around 500 around the end of January and then have to win every single game to close the season. And there's a lot of reasons why. One is, like you said, they need to try to get into the playoffs where they can manage these minutes, because like you think about the end of last season, they were great, but they only got 2 games to rest toward the end of the season. If they can put their foot on the pedal to start, they can manage minutes a little bit better throughout the season. So they need to finish top 4 just so that they can get into the playoffs without feeling like they have to gun it the last 2 months of the season, and then you've got to make a long playoff run. That makes it harder. And then they got to do it for seeding, because a team below a top 4 seed, I don't think has won an NBA Finals in a very, very, very long time. We've had a couple of teams obviously make it. The Mavericks were a 5 seed; they made it. The Heat were an 8 seed; they made it to the finals the year before that. But if you want to win a championship, you have to at least be a top 4 seed. You just have to. And then third, if you want Luka to win an MVP, he has to finish in top 4 in the West. And I know people are going to bitch about that. And I understand why. Our own staffer, Matthew Phillips, will write a manifesto about this eventually, about how, Russell Westbrook and Nikola Jokic won MVPs being outside of the top 4 of their conference. Those are going to end up looking like really just historic outliers, I think. And not trying to deny that point, I'm just saying if you want Luka to win an MVP, the Mavericks just have to have a regular season where start to finish, they look like one of the best teams in the league. And you don't do that by playing 500 basketball for the first 3 months.
Well, and the Luka conversation always makes me uncomfortable, because to people outside the fan base, I am like a devout Luka stan. And to people within the fan base, I am a unabashed Luka hater, which is so fucking weird, because, and like, this is just true, I knew who Luka was before most Mavericks fans. Like, just full stop.
You were on him before I was on him, that's for sure. Like a year before I even knew who he was.
Yeah. Luka is so fascinating to me. He is my second favorite basketball player behind Dirk. Love him to pieces. And I think the MVP caliber season will happen if he simply doesn't go at the refs. I don't even need him to play top tier defense. I just need him to not go at the refs and get back on defense. And I think that will change so much for this team. It's just me though. All right. I have a couple of questions that I wanted to answer, and then we'll get out of Dodge. So Cowboy left us a tip, and he said, will the Mavericks retire Mark Aguirre's jersey one day? My answer to this question is I have no idea, but I really do hope the new owner actually honors the great Mavericks of the past. I think Cuban did a whole heck of a lot for this team, but his stinginess with jersey retirement stuff was not something I ever understood. The retirement of Kobe Bryant's number, in hindsight, looks stupid. I'm sorry, just does, when you don't have guys like Mark Aguirre or Jason Terry's jersey retired. Like, what are we doing? I hope the Mavericks are a little bit more liberal with that sort of thing, because celebration of a team's history is extremely important. And this Mavericks team, for the past 20 years, the first 10 years, the 90s were not good, but of the 40 plus years of existence, the Mavericks have had some really good seasons over 30 of their 40 years. And I hope they honor that history. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's absolutely bizarre that his number hasn't been retired by now. I mean, Kobe Bryant's number has been retired technically, and not Mark Aguirre. I mean, the Mavericks only have 4. They've been a franchise for 40 years, and they've got 4 numbers retired. 2 of them have happened in the last 3 or 4 years. And like you said, I understand that they were a dreadful franchise in the 90s, but those 80s teams were incredible. and then everything after, since Dirk's been here has been great. I think the Aguirre stuff there's some bad blood there.
It's
I don't know.
complicated.
Yeah, I don't think him and the franchise are on good footing, but that was also with the previous, Cuban don't own the team anymore. So I don't know if that changes opening that door, opening that relationship back up. And then we'll see where we go from there. But like him and Jason Terry's number have to be retired soon. Like if their numbers aren't retired within the next 5 years or so, that's going to be pretty nutty, because those are two of the most consequential players in the history of the organization.
That's right.
So we'll see where they go from there. But yeah, I mean, his numbers should be retired. It's one of those things where I don't have the insight to know this because I know that there is some bad blood there, but I don't know enough.
I just hope they do.
They do. They should.
Like that's what the finals run was a reminder of. Is like basketball is supposed to be fun, and yeah, that's where I'm at.
How many more do you want to go? Do you want me to do one more?
I want you to do one more, and then we're going to answer some fun ones.
Okay. Well, let me go from one of mine. We kind of already talked about, because one of them was how worried are you and Kirk about Kid being? Well, I'll just do this. So Art from RD at Mavs_RD. How worried are you and Kirk about Kid being able to manage the players' expectations for time? Outside Prosper Powell and Lawson, seems like there are 12 who can make claim for minutes. Hardy, Exum, and Dinwiddie are same dimension, playing for new contracts.
I'm pissed I missed that one. That's a good question. So I have long list of Kid complaints. Kid's ability to manage egos and player expectations with a team that is too tough, like that has clear tiers of where you would put players. I have a lot of confidence that he's going to make this work. I just do. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing, even when things have been like, even when they missed the playoffs last year, chemistry didn't feel like the locker room was falling apart. Like everyone wondered why Kid didn't get fired after that season, because by objective measures, it was one of the most disappointing seasons in NBA history. Like to have a 24, 25-year-old Luka Doncic, all NBA first team guy, play 60 games or whatever he played, and you finish 11th in your conference. You're not going to, I wrote a column about this. You're not going to find worse seasons than that when you have a star player that's young and in his prime across league history. And I think the reason that didn't happen is because the players he never lost the locker room. Like there was never a point where it felt like the players were mutinying against him. And that's usually when you have to make the call. And from by all accounts, Luka and Kyrie never got frustrated enough that needed to be a change. So that's going to be the one thing that, like you said, have full confidence in managing, because that seems to be the thing that he's really great at. You can say whatever you want about him, but that's not one thing you can really criticize. So even when they won 38 games in 2023, they never lost the locker room. Like it, and that speaks a lot to, I think, how he connects with players. So hopefully this isn't even going to be an issue for the team. But I understand it, why you'd want to ask about it, because they do have a lot of guys that probably expect to play.
Yeah, no, I'm fascinated by that. All right, I have one more that I definitely want to answer, and then we'll see where we are at, because I have a hard out in about 10 minutes. Friend of the show, Mavericks Super Follow on Twitter, at Reddit Mavericks. He has 45,000 Twitter followers. Okay. He says, what other books can you recommend to me? I'm about to be done with the 3 Body Problem series. This one cracked me up.
This is all you.
So anybody that hasn't read the 3 Body Problem series, it is a translated science fiction series from a Chinese author, and it is very different. And it was a really intense Netflix show. Recommend it, is what I'll say. Books are pretty hard to read, though, at some points, just because it dips into being kind of like a physics book. I'm gonna point Reddit Mavs in a completely other direction. There's an English author by the name of Joe Abercrombie. He has written 12 books. I have read 11 of them. 9 of them are set in the same universe. and they are all amazing. So look up Joe Abercrombie. Start with The Blade itself, and then get back to me with what you think. Just fascinating reading. I read all kinds of different stuff. I dip sort of in and out of science fiction, fantasy, and other stuff. Thank goodness I've not fallen into any of the weird romantasy stuff that is apparently close as over $500 million industry last year, which is basically like borderline dragon smut. Really weird stuff that people are reading these days. I judge all of you. Josh, no reading for you these days? No.
The last full book I finished was in 2013. So
damn.
I don't read.
Yeah, that's it. See, that's the newspaper guy for you.
Yeah. I'm reading just the facts.
Have we abused you into watching Andor yet?
Well, I think we're gonna get close. We're getting close. Now that I'm about a month away. I know I am a liar. I'm gonna set a goal for myself by the end of August.
Okay, that's pretty good.
That's what I'm gonna say.
It's pretty good. Did you like any of the last questions?
I didn't get as many as you, so I'm going through yours.
Yeah.
There were so many. I mean, if we want to go back to,
no, we should. Honestly, I'm going to do this again next week, and we're going to return to these because some of these are really good questions.
Okay, yeah, there are some really good ones. I'm trying to think of like a fun one because we've done all the.
Yeah.
We've talked enough real ball.
That's okay. Well, I'll finish with one more then, and I'll
yeah, you go. If you've got one in the chamber, go ahead.
Okay, so my friend KT says best Apple TV show recommendations. I'm going to have to make a recommendation, a soft pitch for Mythic Quest, which has one of your guys from Always Sunny, Rob McElhaney. Is that how you say his name?
Yep.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. Like, that's probably my favorite under the radar show. My wife and I are also finishing up Presumed Innocent with Jake Gyllenhaal. It is a television version of a 90s or of an 80s movie, but also a novel, and it is just really well done. Richard Case is, of course, correct about Foundation, though Foundation is truly out there for like a hardcore sci-fi head. Like, it's very sad. I read a story earlier this week. Apple TV has spent like they're basically finally doing an ROI on how much money they spent versus what it's done for them. And I think the end of like unfettered spending on Apple television is over. It's very, very sad for me because
where are they going to launder their money now?
I don't know, man, because it's like I told you, like when you watch Foundation, the first few episodes of watching Foundation remind me of being in the theaters for when I first saw Lord of the Rings, where you're like, holy shit, this is the thing that they put on the screen. So
like
anyway, that's my pitch. I will also recommend, just to the fun havers out there, Twisters. Saw that with a raucous crowd in Frisco over the weekend, and Twisters was really fun. So
that's nice. Yeah, I watched. I mean, we haven't consumed a lot of media lately. I watched Quiet Place, the first one, last night because I'm trying to see the new one before it leaves theaters, because my wife loves that series a lot. So we're gonna watch the second one probably tomorrow, before the week's over, and then maybe try to go see it in the theaters maybe like this weekend.
Nice.
The new one. So there's that. I would recommend, like, if people are looking for a movie, like, because I just, me, I watch movies. I just don't watch a lot of TV. It's on streaming now. I can't remember if you have to rent it or if it's part of a package, but people should go see the Ryan Gosling stuntman movie.
Okay. My dad liked it.
It's really fun. It's got the right tone. It's very much the people that made it. Like, it is a love letter
to
movies. The stuntman. Yeah. Everything is done there's so much of it is done in camera. There's actually like as an action movie, it's actually like pretty fun, like the set pieces, and since it's this movie about stuntmen, like there's so much in camera stunt work in this movie. It's actually pretty impressive just to watch it for that. Like, and then dope. Like, I think Ryan Gosling's on a heater. Like, he just feels like he's just like a warm comfort blanket right now in these movies. Him and Emily Blunt's chemistry is really well done. It made me laugh. Like, it's one of those movies that, like, I feel like they made a lot of in the 90s and the 80s, and they just don't make them that much anymore. And apparently no one watched it. it didn't make a lot of money in theaters. So I would say I wish more of these movies exist. It's not going to be on any end of year best of lists, but I just wish, like when we were growing up, like you would see a movie like that every weekend.
No, a lot more movies were in and out of the theaters. It's a different deal for sure. Like my favorite movie one of my favorite movies of the 90s, Can't Hardly Wait, was in theaters 4 weeks. And like you go look at the cast and you're like, this movie was out for 4 weeks and that was it. Anyways,
right.
Salam in the chat asks if we've seen Hitman. I really enjoyed it. An enjoyable hour 40 minutes or whatever it was. It was very. I
really like that director, so I need to watch it.
Yeah. Well, okay, guys, we'll be back next week. I'll probably take some more questions. You guys can shoot me an email, shoot me DMs. I'll try to keep track of this stuff. Same with Josh. Josh does not check those things. But we will ask maybe with a little more than 2 hours notice, and we'll see what other questions we get. This is good stuff. We like talking Mavs history, basketball history. We got all sorts of stuff to cover. Next week, probably by the time we talk, the Olympics will have started. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about the former Mavericks in the Olympics, like that Ben wrote about for Mavs Moneyball. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, guys. We will be back next week. Everyone have a great rest of the week. Go Mavs.
I'm Xavier Worthy, wide receiver for the NFL. Speeding. It's a rush on the field, in the zone, where it matters. As an athlete, I push my limits to win. But when I get behind the wheel, I know the importance of slowing down for safety. Because speeding is illegal. It endangers you, your loved ones, and everyone else on the road. Did you know speeding accounts for more than 1/4 of all traffic-related fatalities nationwide? Just like we need to focus to score touchdowns and win games, we need to be in the zone to stay safe on the road. Speed limits are in place to protect everyone, no matter what the speed limit is. Anything over is not only illegal, but dangerous. Like athletes, drivers must stay alert and present because there is no reward for speeding. Nothing is safe about it. Driving over the speed limit might seem like the quicker option, but speeding catches up with you. Stay focused. In a split second, everything can change. Paid for by NHTSA.